to do its work. So we buckle to a discussion with the panelists on IEBC. Should it be restored or entirely disbanded? And we know the bigger job begins next month for them. Right, let's just begin with Richard Onyonka on this. IEBC is opposing, first of all, the proposal in the Building Bridges Initiative report that call for its disbandment, describing them as diversionary tactics that ignore the perpetual cause of divisiveness during elections and ethnic antagonism. Your reaction, sir?
I think I've watched some of the comments that Chebukati makes recently. And I don't know why he looks like somebody who either is so cocky and is so full of himself, like they say. The power in this country belongs to the people of Kenya. If the people of Kenya decide they don't want the IEBC, they will ask for it to be disbanded. We all know that IEBC has got term limits. We know that it is not a commission that you just walk in and disband because of who disagrees with it. Mm-hmm. But the truth and the reality is that let's look at the history and let's look at what has happened. In the last elections, there were how many commissioners did we have debarred? Mm-hmm. The commissioners are supposed to be 9. Right now, as we talk, the number of commissioners which exist in that commission, I don't think there are more than 4. The last time I was counting. 3. There are 2 things that we can do, and this is where this is the feeling I have that what Chebukati should be telling us is this. If you feel that IEBC is dysfunctional, let us sit down as members of parliament, for example, and discuss why that dysfunctionality. All right, I'll give you an example. Everybody was talking about how IEBC has a CEO, in that case, the young man who was fired. Are we together? Mm-hmm. And he basically would make decisions without consulting the commissioners. He was doing single sourcing of purchasing equipment, machinery, hardware and software without the authority of the commissioners. The commissioners would even make recommendations to him, and he would even ignore what the recommendations were. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sure whether that means then you disband the commission, but I think Chebukati should actually be persuading us, all right? He should be telling us that, look, we have been having challenges. Yes. I've tried the best I could do. I've held certain elections which have been successful. We had national elections which didn't succeed. And I think where you need to fix, or what you need to fix within the commission is this and that. But for him to say that you cannot disband IEBC because the IEBC is doing a stunning job and it's a successful commission, I think for me is overstretching his imagination. Mm-hmm. Let us be realistic and honest with ourselves. Yes, we have the political class to blame for election problems, but at the same time, we have a serious challenge on what the commission that has been running elections in this country has done. In fact, the only successful election was the one of 2002, mm-hmm. all right? Then the other one of the referendum. Mm-hmm. Since then, we've always had issues. And I think we need to be sincere and honest. There are some people who are saying we need to bring in political parties to come to the table from different situations, sit down and agree on how we can form an IEBC which is believable, which is, has got integrity, which can deliver an election which will not create animosity and discontent within the Kenyan people.
Right, Prof, do you also hold with the view that this BBI report is just a diversionary tactic or tactics that ignore the perpetual cause of divisiveness, as they put it, during elections and ethnic antagonism?
But I think I could analyze the situation as follows. I don't think what the BBI is saying is a diversionary tactic, but I also share Chebukati's view that there are much more fundamental causes to the BBI dysfunctionality than itself. Okay, so unless we deal with the factors that cause the dysfunctionality of the BBI during elections, disbanding it. I mean, IEBC. Yes. Unless we deal with that, disbanding it by itself will not solve the problems. That's my position. Now, if you look at it really, the IEBC becomes particularly dysfunctional when it is dealing with presidential elections. That is where the cheating is. In fact, as Richard here says, all elections except for the 2002 and 1963, the independence one, all the others have not been peaceful, particularly over presidential elections. It is the presidential election which causes this country a lot of problems. The stakes are too high, both for the candidates and their supporters. And they believe that the prize must be won. Secondly, because it's a winner-take-all system, the stakes are even higher. So you find that people are competing for control of the IEBC. And the government in power will most likely not let the IEBC be independent as it is supposed to do, especially if the incumbent president want to be, quote-unquote, elected, fairly or unfairly. And usually it's unfairly. That is why the IEBC is manipulated. Now, the last election, 2017, was particularly painful because the guy who was in charge of the ICT system in the IEBC was assassinated or killed just before the day. It was obvious since that assassination or murder of Musando has never been explained. It is obvious that powers that be were involved. You see what I mean? So, and I think Chebukati knows all this. And Chebukati says, look, really, don't blame us as the incumbent IEBC. Deal with the basic causes. And the basic causes, to me, is not try to... The basic cause is the presidential elections. Let's not beat about the bush. Now people then say that, well, if we don't have a president, then what do we do? There are systems that have been proven to be better than the presidential system. South Africa is a parliamentary system. Calling the prime minister president, we could do the same. If it's the word president that we don't want to lose, then let's have a parliamentary system. And the head of the party that wins the elections is called a president. There's no problem. But if we continue as we have been doing, and even change the IEBC, nothing will change. You see, human beings are different from animals. If animals who do the same thing again and again and fall into problems, human beings need to change. I mean, you have seen, for example, an animal trying to go through to a fence. Yes. It will roll back, come and hit the fence in the same place, you see, until it thinks it can broken it. It doesn't work that way. So I think let's not hit our heads against the wall regarding the functionality of the IEBC. Let us know historically, and the evidence is there. When has the IEBC been dysfunctional? When has it been in problems? When has it impeded unfair? By using personality in the IEBC to facilitate the election of somebody into the presidency.
Yes. All right, let's hear from Okongo Mogeni. Good morning.
Morning, Debal. I think first I share the sentiments from my colleagues that IEBC is suffering from lack of confidence from the people of Kenya, and that there is need for us to do some reforms in that institution. And as our colleagues will tell you, there is a bill, I think, that has just been passed over to us from the National Assembly, where there is a proposal to put in place a panel, that will, in a very professional and fair manner, pick commissioners that may enjoy the confidence of Kenyans. But, I don't know what ails Kenya, Dibal, because there have been so many attempts to create an electoral body that enjoys the confidence of Kenyans. All through from, 1997, we tried the IPPG. We again created one that was for 2 years, temporary one. Then we had the Isaac one, now we have Chebukati, and you have seen the problems that they have faced. In fact, one of the commissioners called Akombe said her conscience could not allow her to continue serving in that body, and she resigned and left the country. And then we saw the other 4 again who resigned and left. So I think there has been a problem that we need to fix through the legislation that is pending. And this should interest everybody, that what is being proposed is a panel that gets representation from the Law Society of Kenya, Kenya Human Rights Commission, the Public Service, the Gender Commission, and then Kenyans will be given an opportunity through an open public advertisement system. Then they apply they are interviewed, and then processed by parliament, they take up their position. But I think what we need to acknowledge as a country is that world all over, there will always be an attempt to manipulate an electoral system, especially presidential. You remember in the US in 2002 up to date, even the Supreme Court said they could not determine who had won the election. Last elections, we saw what Russia did when Trump was running. And even now, as we speak, there is an investigation by Congress going on allegations that Russia again wants to interfere. In our neighboring Malawi, the presidential elections were nullified because the electoral body was not able to conduct a credible election. It went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, go back to the people. So I think what we need to look for as a country is men and women who can occupy that position and serve the public interest. And the public interest is to allow the people of Kenya to exercise their will, whom they want to elect. But I don't know, because the guy was picked as the chief executive officer, was picked from the UN. He was serving the UN, brought to IBC. But I think because of the pressure, you know, the interference from the deep state, you find that even people who come with a very colorful CV, once they enter into IEBC, they easily get compromised. So I don't know whether it's our ethos as a country, whether we need to really, you know, make the state understand that the decision of who should be the president of this country should be left to the people of Kenya. But as long as there is interference from the state, it will be very hard for anybody you take to IBC to be fair and, you know, resist an attempt to be manipulated by the state.
All right, but we don't have any evidentiary document that there is interference from a state. That still remains to be substantiated. You
look worldwide, look at how many presidential elections have been nullified, where a president is elected, takes oath, and then a court of law nullifies an election.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from Onyonka. Good morning.
I hold the view that we don't have a problem with the IEBC.
We don't have a problem?
No. Elections world over are difficult to manage. As we speak, a couple of days, I think weeks, America is yet to know who won the Iowa caucus, properly at least. Let me tell you this. In 2002, I think you must have been a very young man or a big boy. I was in a polling station when somehow many observers I think they were moving in groups. I don't know whether that's how they operate. They came to this polling station, and I think it was their first polling station. They were amazed at how Kivuitu had organized the election. Truth be told, the bar, there are few places in the world where elections are handled as professionally and as well as we do it in Kenya. That is a fact. Somebody like Isaac Hassan, whom you jettisoned out of IEBC, is a well sought after expert in election matters. Now, what is the problem? The problem with our country is our politics. That is where everything starts and stops. Once you sort out your politics, Kenya will even become a first world country. It is the politics. And I have been holding the view that that's what BBI wants sort out. Because the problem is not the conduct of elections in Kenya. No. The problem is the transfer of power. Nobody can do that, however efficient you are. Have you heard anybody complaining down there? How many nullifications do we have? How many elections are nullified for MCAs and MPs? You can't even talk about them. Everybody agrees elections are conducted well. But the last baton to be handed over to the next fellow, that is where the problem is. And you can't fix that merely by an IEBC, important as it is. A country as big as India, with millions, hundreds of millions of voters, just has about 3 people managing an election. So it's not quite the IEBC. Although when we get there, we will give our suggestions on how to make it better. The problem is simply our politics.
All right, so
unless you fix our politics, even if you put whoever you put in IEBC, because the transfer of power is beyond the IEBC. You get it? So we must fix our politics.
Thank you.
Let BBI now, let me talk about BBI, Professor. Let BBI do it. If it fails to do it, we'll continue cutting each other with panga, like 17th century people.
But it's the same BBI which is actually proposing the disbandment of IEBC because of lack of trust from Kenyans as well.
You know, there are many things. When we get there, we shall do something about IEBC.
Yeah.
To me, it's not very important. The important thing is the politics.
All right. Gladys.
Yes, Tubal, I think the challenge that we have with IEBC is that it's a very unique institution. It's an institution that requires the public confidence and trust for it to operate. So first, they must have that. And they can only achieve that, not by changing personalities, but by improving the systems. Because it's not about who you put there. If you put airtight systems that everybody understands and everyone is part of developing it, and everyone through civic education, which IEBC has a directorate to do, have an understanding of it, then it becomes easier for the public to believe in IEBC. And I'll give you a simple example. For example, if you tell people that there's a system such that whenever people are voting, they report every hour how many people have walked into the polling station, how many people have exited, how many people have picked the ballot papers. If you report that every hour, what it actually does is that you then avoid the ballot stuffing at the last minute, at the end, because the stealing happens the last 1 hour, so that you can all be able to say with precision that if so many people had voted by 4 o'clock, it is an impossibility that 2,000 people voted in the last 2 hours, when only 1,000 had voted the entire day. So it's the systems and the operational method. Even when we look back at Kivuitu's running of the elections in 2007, Kivuitu, the election operations was perfect. It was at the tallying that the chaos started. The stealing started at the tallying. Therefore, we must have an airtight tallying system. We must have an airtight operational system. We must have a solid staff members of the Electoral Commission. If you look at the Electoral Commission, you have the professionals, and I have had the privilege of serving as a deputy CEO in charge of election operations and voter registration and voter education in IEBC. And in fact, what Honorable Onyonka is saying, the best run election was in 2010 for the referendum. We returned results in 29 hours. And everybody who was working at IEBC then was a greenhorn. It's not because we had experience in running elections. It was because, first, there was one thing, there was commitment, and then there was also a lot of Kenyans had confidence. We had been appointed through KPMG, the team that was there at that time. But also, we focused a lot on systems. And I remember that we had people from Australia. Personally, I had a consultant who worked with me who came in from Australia. He had served as chairperson and CEO of the Electoral Commission Australia. And Australia is known as running the best elections in the world. So it's about setting up the systems and putting in. But we can't just say we change people. But even as we look at it now as IEBC is currently constituted, it has 2 people. I mean, 3 people, 3 commissioners. And the way IEBC works is that you have the commissioners, and the commissioners are each in charge of a committee. So how do you get the 3? They put themselves together and become a committee for election operations. Then they make another subcommittee for reviewing staff benefits. Then the next time they reconstitute themselves, and they are the ones who are deciding where we are procuring the ballot papers from. I mean, it's prone to abuse. So first of all, we should be saying, let us reconstitute IEBC and have the full base of the commissioners.
Thank you.
Let us agree that how do we do the selection such that people can have confidence in it. Because if you remember the one that President Kibaki, President Kibaki fought for the IPPG, and then after that they said that there would be a representative of, I think, every political party would nominate someone to IEBC. There was actually confidence at that time because every political party felt that there was someone looking out It's like having an agent there. And so we moved away from that system, and that is where the chaos. In fact, actually, it was President Kibaki who disbanded a system he fought for when he was leader of opposition.
Right. We'll look into that. And of course, I'll drop in also Professor, because you'll be leaving also earlier today. So Chebukati, first of all, also wants the full implementation of the 2008 Kriegler report, which you're actually alluding to also, Gladys and Davado, also Okongo.
No, he's supposed to have been doing it. What has he been doing for all these years? One part of the task he was supposed to have undertaken when he became the chairman was to implement the Kriegler report.
Right. But
so he can't start lecturing us about it now.
He says that, you know, the report that recommended the expiry of the term of the chairperson and the commissioners should not coincide with the elections year or the election years, and that all commissioners should be in office at least 2 years before general election.
That is in the law.
That is in the law.
Yes. That is in the law. It's not Chebukati's decision.
Okay, let's hear from Prof.
Well, I think my point, I think Madam has said it very clearly, and I think all my colleagues said so. Let us deal with the system. Let us deal with the manner in which the IEBC constituted. Let us make sure that in the constitution of the IEBC, you develop the confidence of all the people who are playing the game of elections. The people who are playing the game of elections, who are participants in elections, are political parties. They are civil society. They are the people themselves, communities. I mean, let's not forget this. In as much as possible, I'm not saying fully, but in as much as possible, every community should see that the IEBC represents them. Because it doesn't mean that they determine the size of the community that way. But there are people who people can have confidence in. Even if I come from Bungoma, people in Meru will have confidence in me because they know your public profile. I mean, there are people with a public profile who inspire confidence. Lawyers who have done all kinds of things, and people see that these people are public-spirited. People have not been involved in funny scandals and deep state affair. You know what I mean? I mean, in composing the IEBC, you should have men and women of decent character who can inspire confidence in the people and who will go by the rule of law. Because the IEBC itself must function by the rule of law. If it doesn't function by the rule of law, then how can we have confidence in it? I was saying that even if you have all this is my position, and I hold it very dearly because the history of Kenya says so. Even if you do all that, and we still have people competing for this pricely position called the presidency, they will go and mess it up. Because they're so powerful anyway. The IEBC, hey, this guy is likely to become a president. Let me bow down to him. Because the president is so damn powerful. You see what I mean? Let's face reality. Why are you avoiding this? Kenyans seem to be avoiding this issue. I don't know why. And yet, you see our history, that is where the problem has been. The BAL, that's my position, and I will hold it until the next IEBC comes in place, and the BBI must deal with this. You see, I think let's not compromise too much in the BBI. We did compromise. We did compromise in Naivasha in making the last constitution, and we're suffering from it. You see what I mean? The thing came to Parliament. We tried to amend it. We had 49 amendments already passed by Parliament, but then it was too late because of the timetable.
Right. So there has to be a nexus between, you know, the personality, because you're talking about inspiration from the personalities within IEBC and the system as well.
Yeah, yes.
So it cannot be just the system, because Gladys, you're saying, oh, we don't need actually to change personalities.
We must start with the system. No, I talked about trust and confidence. Public trust and confidence.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a short break. When we circle back, we continue with more, and we'll drill deeper. I'll urge you to just head over to a Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook. 20686 our SMS.